In this video, we're going to start with the sections 3.1 and 3.2 activity. Section 3.1 talks about simple interest, so we're going to do that first. So we have some formulas here. Simple interest is different from compound interest in that with simple interest, we only calculate the interest once, and then we add all the interest in at the same time. With compound interest, we are adding interest in at regular intervals where interest is becoming principal as it is added into the account. But simple interest is only added once. So our first formula here is I equals P times R times T. I is interest, P is the principal, R is the annual interest rate written as a decimal, and T is time in years. And then if we take that interest and we add it to the principal, we get the second formula. So P is the principal. We're adding the interest calculated using PRT to the principal to get the total amount in the account. And we can get this second formula here by factoring out the P. So you should be able to recognize that if I factor out the P, it's the greatest common factor in both of these terms. This is what I get. If I were to distribute this, I would get P times 1, that's P, and then P times RT, that's the PRT here. So these are the same formula, it's just factored. So we're going to go through some simple interest problems here. The first one says to find the total amount due on a loan of $800 at 9% simple interest at the end of 4 months. And then there's a hint here to remember that time is in years in the formula. So we have some numbers in here that we need to identify what they are. We are looking for the total amount, so that's the amount in the account. We have the principal, P, which is $800. We have the interest rate of 9%, so that would be 0.09 is what we would plug into the formula. And we have T is the time, which is 4 months. Time is in years in the formula, because this is an annual interest rate. So when we plug in for T, what we're going to do is we know that 4 months is 1/3 of a year. So we would plug in 4 over 12, or 1/3. So if we're given the time in months, we divide that by 12 to get the time in years. So now I'm going to plug those in. I can use either version of the formula, whichever one I like. I will choose to use the bottom one here, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to plug in 800 for P. I'm going to plug in, then we have the 1 plus here, 0.09 for R, and then 4/12 or 1/3 for T. So this looks a little bit weird here, multiplying a decimal by a fraction, but on my calculator it'll work out just fine. So here's my calculator. I'm going to type 800 times 1 plus 0.09. There's a couple different ways I can do this. Times 4/12, I'm going to use the A over B button to make the fraction. Generally, I recommend typing everything in all at once just because that avoids some rounding errors that you might get if you don't do that. Here I get 824. So what that tells me is that I'm paying $24 to borrow $800 for 4 months. $24 is what I'm paying in interest. So for the second question, we have T-bills. They're used by the U.S. Treasury Department to finance the public debt. If you buy a 180-day T-bill with a maturity value of $10,000 for $9,893.78, what annual simple interest rate will you earn? Assume a 360-day year called a banker's year and express your answer as a percentage correct to 3 decimal places. This banker's year here thing here is a little weird. Basically, it's something that was useful before calculators were invented because they make the fractions a little bit easier to work with in terms of the time. You could get something that simplifies, which we're going to see here. If you use 360, there's a lot more things that can simplify with the fraction instead of 365. Now that we have calculators, it's not really that useful, but again, it's something that was useful back in the olden days. So what we're looking for here is R. the interest rate, so that's what we're trying to find. We are given the amount in the account is the $10,000. So that's the amount that it matures into. Our principal amount is the amount that we originally pay for the bond, or the T-bill, which is $9,893.78. And then our T, our time, is a 180-day bill. So it's 180 days out of 360 days. That's half a year. And you can see if I use 365, that wouldn't simplify as nicely to 1/2. So it's just something that makes the calculation a little bit easier, again, if you had to calculate it by hand, which fortunately we do not have to do. So we're going to plug these in and solve. I'm going to use the top version of the formula this time, although either version will work. Whichever you like, whichever you think is going to be easier to solve is going to be fine. So $10,000 I'm plugging in for A equals P 9893.78 plus P again 9893.78 times R times 1/2, or 0.5. So solving this equation for R, first I need to get rid of the things that are added or subtracted to the term with the R. Pretty much the same as solving an equation like 2x plus 4 equals 10. The numbers are just a little bit more strange, but process is the same. First I get rid of things that are added and subtracted, and then I'm going to divide. So when I subtract this, I get $106.22. Use a calculator. I'm going to multiply these two here together, the 9,893.78 times 1/2, to figure out what that is. So that is going to be $4,946.89 times R. So again, I multiplied these two. And then I'm going to get R by itself by dividing by that number. So divide both sides by 4,946.89. And when I do that, I get my interest rate of 2.147%. So when they say correct to 3 decimal places, what they mean is 3 decimal places after you've converted it to a percent. So on my calculator, this is going to give me this. And then I'm going to move the decimal point 2 places or multiply by 100 to get the percentage. And then the percentage needs 3 digits after the decimal point. So that would be my answer.